Art Bell and his guest, Mel Waters, and the story of Mel's Hole.
80,000 feet of fishing line vanished into a bottomless hole in Cottitas County, Washington. And when a dead dog was thrown in, it didn't stay dead. Is this truth stranger than fiction? Let's talk about it. Mel Waters changed the world when he reported there was a hole on his property. And not just any hole, it was a hole that he had used for years as a trash dump. And in fact, so did the previous owners, throwing all kinds of things down that hole. But it turns out he believed it was bottomless, or at least that's what he told Art Bell.
You really think you've got 80,000?
Yes, yeah, I get line in 5,000-yard spools. I've gone through that many.
Not only is it not filling up, but when he tosses something in, he can't hear it land. Further to his point, he would take his dogs out to this hole with him, but the dogs would never get close.
As usual, I brought the dogs with me. They wouldn't go anywhere near the damn thing, and if I try to bring them there on a leash, they'll just dig their feet in. They do not want to go anywhere near the hole.
So that was just the beginning. One day, Mel noticed that when he brought his radio around the hole, it would pick up strange signals. This was turning into obsession. What is going on with this hole? Mel couldn't shake the weirdness of it all, and one day, out on his rural property, he took a portable radio to the edge of that 9-foot perimeter hole and began to hear things that didn't make sense. Static would fade, and suddenly he's tuned into a baseball game from 30 years back. Crackly play-by-plays from the 60s, cheers echoing like the past was leaking out of the ground. And it wasn't just a fluke. He stated others swore their radios pulled in old newsreels or big band tunes near the rim. By mid-96, Mel was testing the hole himself, dropping a weighted fishing line down its throat. 80,000 feet of heavy-duty line unraveled, and it never touched the bottom. Now, after he was on coast to coast, he claimed the feds came. Late that year, federal agents rolled in, seized the land, and fed everyone a weak story about a crashed plane from decades ago. Mel didn't buy it. But Mel says they forced him to lease it to them, and by the early 1998, the payments had him resettled in Australia. Locals had trashed the hole with garbage for years, but Mel insisted on show after show with Art Bell that it hid something paranormal. He even made the claim that a neighbor tossed in a dead dog, collar still on, only to see it days later alive, trotting with a hunter. The same collar glinting in the sun, but it wouldn't come near him nor the hole ever again. Mel didn't show up on the Art Bell show just in 1997. Oh no, he was just getting started. He showed up again in 2000 and again in 2002. So here we are, 3 years deep into Mel Waters' wild ride, and on April 24th, 2000, that familiar voice crackles back onto Coast to Coast AM. Art Bell's got him on the line again. And if you thought Mel's story couldn't get crazier after the feds snatched his land back in 96 and shipped him off to Australia by 98, well, buckle up. Mel's not calling from some quiet outback hideaway tonight. Oh no, he's back in the States, and he's got a tale that's about to blow the lid off of everything we thought we knew. He stated, "I couldn't let it go, Art." And he says this with restless edge to his voice. Then he goes on, "I came back in December 99 to dig deeper." and dig he did, until he claims someone decided he'd poke too far. Now, picture this. Mel says he was grabbed off the street, beaten, and dumped 12 days later in a gritty San Francisco alley, left to wonder who wanted him quiet. But that's just the warm-up. Mel's not here to cry foul. He's here to drop a bombshell. He's found a second hole, another bottomless pit that's got all the eerie vibes of the first. He said, "I had to test it," he tells Art, and you can almost hear the listeners leaning in. He tells of tying a sheep to a rope in a cage, lowers it into the void, and then feels it shake with some weird hum. Then down it goes, lower and lower, until it stops. The shaking stopped, and there was no visible sign of the crate at all. Then he reels it back up, and what did he find? The sheep's lifeless little body. He said, "I cut it open right there," he said, his voice dropping. And then he said, like a tumor, there was something there. It was a tiny seal with flippers and human eyes staring at me. Art lets that hang in the air, the kind of silence that makes your skin crawl. And Mel calls it sacred, maybe cursed, and you can feel the weight of it. Now, Art Bell is a great storyteller. He's an entertainer, and he's going to let Mel take his story as far as he'll take it. But at some point, he does begin to question him. He begins to ask, where's the evidence? Where are the pictures? Where are your supporters? Well, it turns out that Mel claimed he did have a supporter.
One of the only people alive ever known to have seen this mysterious hole took me as far as he could or would.
Honey, don't go up that damn driveway.
I want to see if there's tracks up here. I'm just curious.
You're out of your tree going up there.
Red Elk, a Native American shaman or medicine man, tells me his dad first showed him the hole in 1961.
He said, "This is an endless hole."
He says he's been back many times and that strange things happen every time he goes near it.
So Red Elk does seem to substantiate as a witness to Mel Waters' stories, claiming that his father took him there many years ago. But it is interesting. He didn't take anybody to it. He just says it's there, and it's really bad. Don't get around it. Just when you're about ready to dismiss this story as a bunch of hokum, Red Elk drops this little nugget.
When Mel went public, that's when the trouble began.
But why?
Now I'm going public on this.
Red Elk claims the government has a secret base there.
It's an underground base, a very small underground base.
That's how Red Elk explains white boxes covering the area on some satellite images. Is the government covering something up? Red Elk says he's also witnessed alien activity at the hole.
A huge spacecraft, one, will appear and hover over the hole.
That, he says, happens during summer solstice.
They unload and then they load, and then they take off. God help the things that they load.
But if this whole story was a bunch of hokum, why did the white box show up on the satellite images? And why did this happen?
Sensational. And then it just mushroomed, completely out of control.
Allensburg Public Library historian Milton Waggy says the phone rang off the hook with all kinds of stories about the hole, some explainable, some not. He's still trying to solve the mystery of what happened to the library's file on Mel's hole.
Well, it just disappeared, which lends itself to the mysteriousness of Mel's hole. You know, did Mel take it? Did it just sort of rise out of the locked file cabinet? You never know, you know.
2002. Mel Waters makes his last appearance on Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. He now claims that near his bottomless hole near Ellensburg is a restricted zone, claimed that shadowy figures had trailed him since he slipped back into the United States from Australia. He said, "They got me in 99, beat me and left me toothless in San Francisco. But this time, it's worse." Mel dropped a bombshell. In Nevada, old Basque men, weather-beaten, speaking of ancient pacts, warned him the hole was a door tied to something called burning ice. "They told me to shut up or I'm done." Art pressed hard. "Who are the Basque, Mel? And where's the proof? Where's the photos? You've been at this for 5 years." Mel swore he had taken shots of the pit's glowing depths and the Basque watchers, promising to mail them. "They're watching me, Art, and if I send them, they'll know." So who are the Basque? Well, apparently, the Basque are Europe's enigma. Rooted in the Pyrenees, their language a relic with no kin, their history stretching back to a time before empires. In Nevada, their shepherd kin settled, but these weren't just herders. They hinted at guarding a secret older than the land itself, something the whole had awakened. Just days later, after that broadcast, a battered envelope hit Art's desk. 3 Polaroids from Reno. One showed the hole, its edge sharp, a globe pulsing below. Another caught a Basque figure, face hidden, near a gnarled tree. The third was a white smear labeled "Burning Ice." They took the rest. Art posted them online, but the site crashed fast. Was it hacked or silenced? Men in dark coats also lingered near his studio. And Mel vanished. Mel had a lot to say about his bottomless depth pit, claiming that it was over 80,000 feet deep. He also claimed that you could throw objects over and you wouldn't hear a sound. He claimed that there was a reappearance of that sheep that was allegedly thrown in there in that cage, and that he cut open and found that there was a seal with human eyes. He also claimed it had anti-gravity properties, where a metal collar was around the hole, supposedly levitated. He talked about how strange the heat was. Ice lowered into it melted instantly. Radio signals broadcasting shows from years gone by. It also claimed to have healing properties. But I guess probably the strangest of all is the government cover-up. I guess after all, if you've got a bottomless pit, why would you not have a government conspiracy involved? And so it does beg the question. You've got satellite images with a white box over the property he claimed he owned. We have the librarian talking about Mel's hole. They had information, and then suddenly that information's gone out of the library. And then you have Art Bell receiving those Polaroids, and then these figures lurking about. And of course, Art making, good on his promise about publishing any evidence, causing the website to crash. Is it all just a coincidence? Well, there was one scientist that went out and claimed he found Mel's hole, and he tells what he knows about it. This was in 2012. As of 2025, there is no definitive proof where this Mel's hole truly existed. In fact, Mel Waters is a sketchy individual. Did he exist? Was that a persona? Nobody really knows. Did he own the property? Can't find any record. But one brave soul back in 2012 claimed that he found a hole. Jack Powell, a geologist with the Washington State Department of Natural Resources, found a hole near Ellensburg and dropped a rock. And he believes that that hole was just an old mining shaft. Claim of land being scrubbed from satellites could suggest a cover-up. But federal redactions typically target military bases, like nearby Yakima Training Center 30 miles south, not random rural plots. Declassified FOIA requests and land records showed no unusual activity or image alterations in Catatas County during 1997 to 2002. The simplest explanation: Mel exaggerated or invented the detail for his juicy story, and Red Elk ran with it. And speaking of Red Elk, he was also known as Gerald Osborne, born in 1942 and passing away in 2015 as self-proclaimed Native American shaman. And those men lurking about the studio that Art Bell claimed he saw after the 2002 show, I feel he did actually see people lurking about. And I do feel there were people lurking about, but I am not getting there's a connection to nefarious hoodle doings in connection to the lurking. I feel the lurking is more of people sort of interested. Are we going to catch this Mel Waters, coming to the studio with his proof? I kind of feel that way. I also feel that Art Bell, I know he's passed, but in that moment, I don't know that he really bought the story that Mel was selling. I feel like when he pressed for answers, that sort of confirmed in his mind that this story was an imagination. But when he saw those people lurking about, he's like, no, I don't know. And I feel like he was already prone to, I don't want to say paranoia, but always questioning. Always questioning. And now for the fun part, the remote view. What did I pick up looking at Mel Waters? Is he real? Is the whole real? Was the whole thing a figment of the imagination? And if that was the case, why did he fabricate it? I love these mysteries. They're so fun to dive into. And you can actually dive into it too. So go with me on this little story, the remote view information that I picked up. Then allow it to sit. Do you feel light or do you feel tight? Because you can remote view with me. And if you disagree, that's okay. You can sit back, quiet yourself, because the miracles of consciousness is all about getting you tuned in to your higher self, and know that your higher self is connected into the big one, or I like to call it the cosmic internet. It's not just limited to just a few. You got it too, and it just takes a bit of skill. Am I always right? No, but I have been pretty right with a lot of things. So I'm open to being wrong, and this is subjective and for entertainment purposes only. But this is what I got on my remote view. Who was Mel Waters? Well, that's a persona, not his real name. And not surprising, because there's no records found of this person ever living in Nevada or in Washington or anywhere else that I can find. And there's been several years of sleuthing that have never recovered a man as Mel Waters, known as Mel Waters, that was in the area that he said he was in. Okay. Now, this is where we get into the psychic sleuthing. So what I got, and I have it here in my notes, because otherwise, this has taken several days just to remote view this. So, and then I've been through it a few times. It's just what you got to do. So, I do get that is not his real name. I feel that he was born around Reno, Nevada. It feels like he was born and raised there. And what I got was, it's kind of a sad thing that I saw. I got this little boy around 3 years old, and dad ups and leaves, and he doesn't know why. I feel, though, when I tuned into that, it felt very much like there was a gambling debt associated with his leaving. So he abandoned this woman and child. I feel like a few years later, his mother remarries. And I got somewhere between 9, 10, 11 years old, kind of in that window. The thing of it felt very isolating when that took place. And again, he's in a remote area. It feels very remote. It feels like there's not a lot of people around. It feels like it's an area around Reno, Nevada, but not in Reno, Nevada. I got like he had maybe 1 or 2 friends, and it feels as though the 2 friends, I feel like they go to war, so I assume Vietnam, but I feel like they don't come back. Whatever is the reason, maybe they just left and they were in war. I don't really tune into what exactly happened, so I'm kind of making a leap there and filling in the boxes. Well, of course, this all of this is really, excuse me, but I did feel they had 2 friends that by the time he was maybe 20, 21 years old, it feels like he doesn't have those friends anymore. And it also feels that mom's gone by this time. And he never really developed, in my humble opinion, a relationship with anybody else. He just feels completely isolated. But he's a reader, and his books are his friends. I feel like he's got dogs. I do feel he has dogs, and I do feel he is a voracious reader. It's kind of like he's depressed, and reading is an escape. And so early on, back when he was a kid, he almost could imagine, because I feel mysteries. He was really into mysteries, and it almost feels like he becomes the sleuth, and he creates the name for himself as a kid, Mel Waters, because he thought that sounded cool. That's what I get. Challenge me, it's okay. That's all right. Let me see what else I put in my notes here. I don't want to miss anything. Oh, the paranormal. He was so into the paranormal. That was the other thing. He was, again, it sort of makes sense. Because if you are into mysteries, you're definitely pulled to the paranormal. Because it's like, can I prove that scientifically? Is there something going on we don't know? Are we in our infancy of science understanding the paranormal? And so I do believe he must have been around a hole, and I don't think it was a big hole. I just think that just kind of ignited the imagination. He probably should have done some research, because nobody's going to buy 80,000 foot hole, because that is impossible. You can't have an 80,000 foot hole and collapse. Anyway, yeah, that's why I don't know if he was trying to say that it was he had the fishing wire that was weighted, and it went down 80,000 feet and he still couldn't find the bottom. Therefore, it was a paranormal portal. I kind of think that's where he was trying to go with it. But when you listen to him on the radio show, even your own imagination's beginning to run with it. And so you kind of fill in the blanks. And that's kind of what we're doing here. All right. I do feel he did eventually get married. And it feels like she left. And he didn't take it very well, because it pulled him emotionally back to the time of feeling completely isolated, and a period where he had like no friends. And I don't feel like I don't feel like he has children. And it feels that he felt so isolated, and something inside him went back to his reading, just to kind of immerse the depression, to mask it, if you will, not somebody who wants to deal with depression. And so he immersed himself into these mysteries. And I also feel like he was a fan of Art Bell, like I kind of see him sitting in kind of a dark room listening to it, just like really sucked in. And then I don't know if he has some kind of a disassociation. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a psychiatrist, but it feels like there's a little bit of a break, like, and I don't know if it's because he's just going into complete fantasy at the time because he's so depressed. I don't know. I don't know. I just feel like there's this breaking from not being fully grounded. And I do feel it's perpetuated by grief and depression, and that's the emotion I get. And again, it's kind of hard because usually when you're doing a remote view, this is going completely blind, understand, because Mel Waters, I know is not his real name. But like in remote viewing, it's almost like having coordinates, right? So when you do the remote view and you have just a series of numbers and double blind, so somebody, makes the association, writes down numbers, give it to somebody, they enclose it, they don't know what they're looking at, and then that person gives it to you, and then you remote view what that is. It's kind of like what we're doing here. And so when you're tuning in, you have to make sure that you don't have an invested outcome into what you're seeing. You have to approach this completely in a place of neutrality. And so I honestly was a little bit bummed. I was kind of hoping that there was a portal out there and there was a Mel Waters, and there's just a government cover-up that was protecting this. But actually, as much as that's an interesting story, I think this story, as tragic as it is, it really pulled at my heartstrings to know that there was somebody out there in such pain that they would go to this length to create this story and actually get on the phone, and for a couple of hours, as he was embodying this Mel Waters persona, it's like all that pain drifted away. All the loneliness, all the isolation just really melted away in the hour or two he was on with Art Bell. I do feel, however, even though he created this story in his mind, it does feel like he sort of slips back in, and when he hangs up, he felt pretty good. It felt really good for a few days, but then it began to wear off. And then it feels like he began to feel guilty. And then he felt like, what did I do? What if somebody challenges me on this? And then he took comfort. Nobody knows Mel Waters, so I'm safe. And so he just goes on. And it feels like he does pick up his energy a little bit. It's almost like that was a shot in the arm that gave him a boost, that lifted him up for a little bit until 2000. And then he began to mull this over in his mind. And I do begin to feel him waffle. Do I call? Do I not call? Do I call? And I feel like he did decide to call and then expand the story. And then again, the same thing took place, where once he was done, it feels like that was a shot in the arm. That feels pretty good. And, and he's kind of riding that high for a while. But then it crashes again. And then he begins to, I feel like there's self-abuse. Why did I do that? What is wrong with me? Yet, he did it again. In 2002, he did it again. And I feel like when he called in on that last time, he knew what he was going to do. He knew that he was going to end in a big drama, so he wouldn't be held accountable if he was ever found out. He just wanted to have that big build-up. What happened to Mel Waters? It's like he wanted to have the cliffhanger. Who shot JR? For those of you who watched Dallas back in the day. Anyway, he wanted that moment. And so, he calls in, And then Art Bell, the master of entertainers, does begin to press, I want to see proof. If you're the real dude, show me the proof. And so I feel like he had to go ahead and produce something. I do feel he did present Polaroids, but he created these Polaroids. And he also had, I don't know if he had somebody take a picture of him in the dark, posing as somebody from the Basque community. But it sort of does feel like him. It's almost like he. That's how I feel. It's like, yeah, you're seeing me, even though you don't know you're seeing me. I do feel it was him. The white smear, I'm not sure. I can't really pick that up. It almost feels like it has a texture of coconut. The coconut oil. That's how it feels to me. I don't know. Of course, any of this is all speculative. It's just a remote view. Now, I do feel he did go to Ellensburg or to that library, and I feel like he posed as an interested person wanting to know about the file. And I do feel he went at a time where he could get that file, and I think he took it. I think Mel took that file from the library, and I think he wanted that file taken, mainly because and I don't know how he knew about it. I can't really pick that up. It's really kind of, I feel like he knows about it, and then he grabs it. But it also builds the mystery. See, it's a government cover-up. I know it. Proven it. That file's not there. So I feel like he somehow knew about it. And so I think he's the one who took that file. Also, I feel like when he was talking to Art Bell, I feel like he intentionally hung up. Yeah, that's why, that was that Who Shot JR moment. That big build up. Now the system crash. All right, so Art Bell posted those photographs, the Polaroids. And remember, we're talking 2002. And we're new to the internet. We're all new to the internet still in that time. It's still basically, even though it was pretty good in 2002, we're still in our infancy. And it almost feels that once he published those photographs, there was such a large audience. It's almost like it, I want to say crashed the server. It just sort of, I feel like it overloads. There's an overload to the system. And so I really feel like it was just kind of a private decision. You know what, we posted this and then this happened. Let's just keep off of it. You know, we can't verify this. You know, there's no hole that can be 80,000 feet deep. You know, there's no person out there who has any land records around Ellensburg with this name. And he said he lived there for years. There's no neighbor coming forward that he said that his neighbors would come to this hole and bring their radios and they would tune in to long ago old-timey music or ball games. Nobody showed up. Nobody substantiated that story, and nobody in the area ever heard of Mel Waters. For somebody who lived there for a lot of years and there's not that many people around, I find that hard to believe. I grew up in a town that was small. Now that it's big, but we all knew everybody. Even the people way out in the country, we knew everybody, and you do in those circumstances. Now, what happened to this persona known as Mel Waters? I feel to some degree he got the feeling that he might be caught, and I feel like he's ski-daddled out of the West, and I feel that he probably is likely still alive. I don't feel he had a death event yet. He feels very much alive to me, but he feels on the East Coast somewhere. I don't know. I keep hearing Philadelphia in my head or in the area. It's almost like he's going to die with that secret. And still I feel very isolated, but I do feel maybe he is married again. And I feel like he's in a better place emotionally. And that was just kind of a bad place in his life. He had kind of a rough coming up, very lonely, very isolating. And his imagination was his friend, and the books and the dogs were his friend. And he got caught up in something that, I guess we could all sort of judge him, and we don't want to do that. But when you get from his perspective, if you will, he's trying to ease his pain. And you know what? It entertained an audience. And that's what Coast to Coast AM is about, is entertainment. And he did that. And so for a little while, we were all pulled in to a story of a hole that was that took people to another dimension, or something to another dimension. And for a little while, we all rode that story that he created. And that's no different than any author out there creating a book. So, when you listen to the story of Mel Waters, I hope that when you hear it, even though what he says is a wild ride, I hope that you'll have compassion and know that there was really no harm. And if it made him feel better, I guess that's okay. It is a little misleading, and that part I don't like. I have to tell you, I'm about truth. And if you feel that same way, I know you know what I'm feeling there. But all I'm asking is to have a little compassion for somebody who is hurting, and maybe a little bit of forgiveness. And that's it. So, but yeah, I don't like the deceit. Nope, don't lie. It's never good. It usually comes back and bites you. And probably, I don't know that anybody will ever know. Maybe he'll speak. That'd be great. Yeah, I made it all up. Maybe he'll do that on his deathbed. Who knows? At this point, it becomes a matter of choice. So, if you would like to have a remote view or a healing session, please visit me at sallyknopp.com. And if you would like to do energy healing, and you don't even know how, visit mdhmap.com. It'll walk you right through it. Anyway, thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and the subscribe button so you don't miss more entertaining videos from this point forward. Thanks for watching.